And I actually had a lot of guilt taking this career break. I felt like, oh my God, I'm like so unworthy. Like, how can I take this career break and therapy on top of it? I felt so guilty for abandoning my post, right? But then like my friends talked me into it, saying that, Leng-Lei, if you wake up and you hope and you drive to work and you hope a car crashes into you so you can call off work, it's a sign that something is deeply wrong. So I was like, okay, I'll take the career break.
Hey everyone, before we begin this next episode of the Hello Mentor podcast, I just want to say, if you're job searching or hiring, check out hiredly.com. We are not just another job platform. We make it easier to find the jobs that people actually want, and we help companies stand out to hire the right talent. So there's a lot of smart tech and there's a lot of human touch. That's Hiredly. So you can head to hiredly.com and give it a go. Hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Hello Mentor podcast. We have Leng-Lei with us today from Aloe.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Leng-Lei and I'm the founder of Aloe.
Tell us a bit about what Aloe does.
Yeah, so Aloe is a mental health platform with the goal of making mental health care a lot more affordable and accessible to everyone, including Malaysians. Yeah.
Right. And when you were chatting earlier on camera, you were sharing with me the story of how you started your corporate career.
Yeah.
And you actually went into audit. Right? Maybe you can tell us a bit about your first job. Maybe.
Yeah, so actually I got into audit because both my parents were auditors, and they basically just told me to study accounting, do accounting and finance. It's a very stable job. That every industry, every company will need like accountants. And even though I really wanted to do like something like physics and philosophy, they're like, that is not going to pay. You're better off just getting a job as accountant and then work in a science company or arts company if you really wanted to. So I was like, okay, since they're paying for my degree and everything, I said yes lah, right? So I went to LSE in UK, did 3 years accounting and finance. I think at that point in time there was a crisis, right? The mortgage crisis.
Right.
The 2008, the global financial crisis. So it was actually really hard to find a job in the UK at that time. And I really struggled, I remember basically losing it and just went online and deleted all my applications, right? I was just like, I had it.
Right. The timing was
I was so tired of the process, right? I just deleted everything. And I told my parents, I think I'm just going to come back to Malaysia. After all, I always see myself retiring in Malaysia. And they said, yeah, sure. If you're going to retire in Malaysia, why not just come back and build your network and build your career in Malaysia? So I went back and then started my career in PwC audit. And if you know audit is 4 years at audit, means a lot of long hours, late nights, deadlines to catch. And yeah, I wouldn't say that I regretted my time in audit. I actually really enjoyed it. A team rushing for a deadline at 4 a.m. And even though the boat was sinking, right? Everyone was in the boat with you and be like, we're in this together.
It's quite funny. I feel like, because I was, as I was sharing before, I was also doing auditing before.
Yeah.
And due to the pressures of the nature of the work life, like very, very deadline driven and all that. It does build that camaraderie a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure for good reasons or not sometimes.
It's better to die in war with your comrades, right? Rather than die alone. But we built very strong bonds at the time. I remember working till 4 or 5 a.m., and my team was still there. And then we were like, let's go home, shower and come back. I remember even once, I think I was with the partner, working on some model till 6, 7 a.m.
Wow.
And I was like, can we just go home? And then he just you leave your laptop here. I'll look at it. Then I left the laptop. Then I went home, showered, took a 1 hour nap and came back to office. But I don't resent any of it. I think it really was a pretty tough training ground for anyone. So yeah, I did 4 years of that, got my chartered accountancy at ICAW, and then obviously left audit, right? I was looking for jobs, and I was very lucky to land a job in private equity as a consultant, right?
Right, which is some of what you originally wanted to do, right? When you first graduated, you wanted to go into sort of investment banking, finance.
Oh no, I actually didn't want to do investment banking. I knew I did not want to do finance. So this private equity firm has 2 departments. The first department, which is the sales department, is where they raise funds and look up for companies to acquire or to buy shares in. And then once they buy the company and they set some targets, they pass it to the second department, which is what I was under, to grow the company, right? So they could set a target like, oh, this company has to grow like 5x, 10x within like a set period of time. And then they pass this like projection or this model, say, and give it to our department and be like, hit this target, right? So I was under that department, it was very operational, a lot of hands-on work. I actually like didn't mind the work so much. I did warehousing, supply chain. I did like B2B sales. I was at one point like using my Honda Jazz as like a delivery like car. I was just sending stocks to my customers because I was basically doing whatever it takes to run the business, right?
Oh, wow.
So it was very, very like hands-on, which is very different from audit, because audit, you're checking the numbers, right? You're checking like, is this number correct? Is this reflected correctly? Is this invoice captured in the right time period? But in the operations, you honestly don't care about that. You're just like, can I hit the sales? How do I set targets for my salespeople so that they don't try to send back their invoices to hit next month's target? We didn't care about, we look at like key drivers and how to grow those how to measure like this like operations and how to increase that number, rather than is this number like correctly presented without material differences, right? So that was pretty tough actually, because coming from audit background, I really had to change the way I looked at businesses, rather than worry about, oh, is there any material differences? I worry about, okay, what's the plan to grow this division by, like 20-30%? Or how do I increase like a stock picking rate? How do I increase fulfillment rates of these deliveries? I think we were talking about those kind of questions, right?
I see.
Yeah, I had to go down the warehouse and like stare like the stock picker, say, are they scanning the barcode correctly? Are they picking it? Are they stacking it correctly? Are they putting it optimally into the van? Like, how many trips does it take? Yeah, we're doing those kind of work.
Right. For those people listening who are not so familiar what private equity is, because they might wonder, why is this person going to the warehouse?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Actually, my boss like scolded me for that as well. So private equity is like a firm where they raise capital to basically invest in companies. So these companies can be usually mid-sized to, or family businesses, right? And usually these family businesses are looking to scale. And to scale, they need fresh funding, or they need the expertise of what the consultants bring in.
I mean, just the nature of PSL, because I can kind of use my own words, right? So basically, there's this this business there that maybe they build a pretty quality business, but they need help to grow it, right?
Yes. They need help to sort of like managerialize it. Because like some of the businesses that they bought into were very family run, so like they had no warehouse systems, right? The way they hired was purely like based on feng shui. They're like, oh, your birthday is good, like you come in,
Right.
So they had like none of these processes. But if they want to bring it to the next level, like IPO level, you need to have a system of governance. You need to have all this like protocols, these SOPs. So then this when we come in and then we sort of like operationalize it and
I see. You're right.
bring in these processes and standardize it lah.
Right. So you bring the process, the governance, and also you bring the funding to help them scale that business.
More importantly is the scale, right? Like from like 10 stores to 100 stores, how do we get from 10 stores to 100 stores, right? You look at warehousing, you look at supply chains, you look at purchasing, you look at staff, you look at all of these things.
Right. And you as someone that works in a private equity company, you have to roll up your sleeves and actually...
Yeah, like it doesn't work when you sit in like an ivory tower, an office, and look at these numbers and be like, I think we should do this, you should do that. When you go to the ground, you're like, oh, that's why they couldn't do what I tell them to do. You tell them to pick stock faster, but when you look at the warehouse, you look at it, you're like they usually have the forklifts and they had to go in, go out and pick the stock, and there's these tall towers, right? But it's all filled with stock. So the forklift can't even like go through like the corridors or the aisles. They have to move the pallets out of the way, bring the forklift, take the stock, bring it down, then move the pallets back to make way for the forklift. And this is why it like took forever. Then you realize, okay, it's not that the stock pickers are being lazy or inefficient. It's because the warehouse is too small, right? And then we say, okay, the solution then is to get a bigger warehouse, consider third-party warehousing. So, you really have to roll your sleeves up and
I see.
get very nitty-gritty.
Got it. And the only way you got to figure out like how to improve it is to actually be on the
Yeah,
ground.
you have to like look at them,
Look at them, right?
watch them, do some of the work yourself.
And do some of the work.
Yeah, let's see what it's like, what's holding them back, right? Yeah.
Right. And was this the last thing you did before you started Aloe?
Yes, this was like the job that I did that sort of led me to start Aloe.
I see, right. And could you tell us that story?
It's actually quite interesting because I think I was under so much pressure. So in audit, we work in large teams, right? You work in teams of 20, you work in teams of 5. You always have a manager that's like, there is like a hierarchy. So you talk to your manager, the manager talks to the director. But here it's very flat in the company, the firm I worked in anyway, it was very flat. And you're put on a project alone, right? So I felt very alone, and some of the targets felt very, very far away from me. And every day there was some fresh coming in. I had a lot of anxiety. I think my self-esteem was like rock bottom, really, right? It was like very low. I felt that the job was way beyond me. How can I grow this? How can I double sales? It's just me, right? And I speak to my director and they would say, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And I'm like, yes, I'll try it. I felt very beaten down and very defeated. I tried to resign once, and my boss was like, no, don't resign. Don't resign. I'll tell you what, we'll give you a big fat raise. We'll give you 80% raise. And I was like, 80%? I was like, hell yeah, I'll do it. I did it for 1 year and I realized I honestly couldn't do it, right? Like, I think I was, every week we had this meeting. I think at one meeting, I was already at tearing. Right? It wasn't even like, he wasn't even scolding me, just looking at targets going like, why is the number going up? I look, I don't know why the number isn't going up, right? And then, I think it was very, I felt very emotional at the time. And then I think, I called my boss. I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to resign. I can't do it. My boss was like, no, don't resign. Tell you what, we give you a career break. We give you a 3 months career break and we include therapy in it, right? At the end of the 3 months career break, you can decide whether you truly want to leave or not, right? And I actually had a lot of guilt taking this career break. I felt like, oh my God, I'm like so unworthy. Like, how can I take this career break and therapy on top of it? I felt so guilty for abandoning my post, right? But then like my friends talked me into it, saying that, Leng-Lei, if you wake up and you hope and you drive to work and you hope a car crashes into you so you can call off work, it's a sign that something is deeply wrong. So I was like, okay, I'll take the career break. And I went for the therapy for like 2 months. So 2 months of the career break, I started Aloe. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, because like when I did therapy, I was like, oh, wow, it really helps, right? And why don't more people do it? Like none of my peers at the time who I know were under tremendous stress as well were not doing therapy. And I felt that they would have really benefited from it. But they didn't. And I asked around and all of them felt like, too expensive, and I thought, maybe there is like a market for this. Maybe I think, more people need this. So then I started Aloe in the second month of my career break.
Yeah, right. And to the extent that you're willing to share, obviously therapy is very personal, right? But what was it in that 2 months that you felt like, wow, this was like so useful. I wish more people do this.
I think like I explored a lot of like my anxiety, a lot of like why I had certain thoughts, right? I had thoughts that, I was unworthy. I didn't deserve a break. The only way I could take a break from work if the car crashed into me. Then my therapist was like, why don't you think you deserve a break? Then I'm just like, I just feel like if I don't work hard enough, if I'm not good enough, then I don't deserve anything good. Then he's like, that's not true. Then she said, you have pretty low self-esteem. Then I was like, me? Low self-esteem, it was something like no one has ever told me before. And she said, yeah, like you work so hard because otherwise you felt you're undeserving of like anything good in your life, right? Why do you feel guilty by taking this break? Then I was like, then a lot of like childhood exploration, Asian parenting, where your parents only like say nice things, you get first in class, you did well in exams, or otherwise just, no affirmations. Not that my parents didn't love me, they just didn't say it. In my mind, my kid mind would say, oh, my parents only say something nice if I did well, right? And I was at this job and I felt I wasn't doing well. And because I felt I wasn't doing well, I felt like my value was tied to achievements, and that, well, if I'm not achieving, then I'm nothing, right? So then, she explored all of this. I was like, wow, I think a lot of my peers suffer this as well, but they don't. I guess it's hard to, like come to this conclusion without someone else asking you the hard questions, right? And I think like I still continued therapy after that, throughout the first like 2 years of building Aloe, to work through like the anxiety of building a business, the anxiety of like leaving like a high paying job to like losing money like every month, right? So yeah, I think it was deeply helpful, and more people would benefit from it. Yeah.
I've always been very curious about this because, obviously I started a business myself, and I have like a peer group who I would consider them to be, very driven, need to do something all the time, right?
Yeah.
And my sense is that a lot of them have something missing, that like there's a gap that they're trying to fill, and that's what makes them run. Maybe
they feel like to always want more, to always like achieve and grow, and but I guess if they're happy where they are, that's fine. But I was like very, very unhappy. I was like crying, drive to work, cry, come back home, work, cry. Right. And I was like, this can't be right.
Right. And I suppose one of my sense is that I guess if it's not, how do I put it, as you say, like if you're not hurting from it, it's no big issue. But if you can get too extreme, right?
It can get too extreme, after a while, like how much can you get, right? How much success do you need, right? I think that's also one of the reasons I felt very alone in PE, was that I didn't really have the same values, right? I remember like I was in this car journey with a few of like my seniors from the other division, the department where they raise funds, and they were like, there's this apartment, very cheap. I can get you a 3% discount, just 5 million, down. And then I was like, no, like I really had like a mortgage coming up, right? Then I said, I already got one. I said, yeah, but why not 2? I'm just like, but why? Right? I was like, there'll be so much debt. Then he's like, oh, it's fine. Then the BMW drive by. Oh, that BMW, I just, drove past, I just test drive that car, right? So nice. And the other guy would chip in, oh, but this BMW, I also don't know what cars, right? And they're like, oh, okay. Then they move on talking about like the Rolex watches. And I was like, like this is not my seed, like my dream is just like retire early and like just live like chill life. I don't need this fancy stuff. And I felt so out of place, right?
Right.
Yeah. There's also like, I felt like, I can't, this is not what I want, right? It is great that they have something to strive for, but for me, I wanted freedom, right? Freedom from like from the rat race, freedom to choose what I want to do with my time.
Right.
Because I know they were under a lot of stress as well. I think like one of my colleagues had like a neck injury from, straining, like bad posture. I don't know, for like physio for her neck.
Oh, I see. Yeah. That's in like bad posture from like working on the laptop. Like.
Yeah, like long hours of working on weekends, working on like public holidays at night, all the time. Yeah.
I see. Right. Yeah. So that there is a danger of like overly chasing material stuff.
I think if it's alright to chase material stuff, I like material stuff, but if it's at the expense of your relationships, your health, your well-being, then I guess we just have to sort of pause and ask like, oh, what am I giving up in this chase, right? I don't want to just say that all material stuff is bad. We all like material stuff, but how much and to what extent? And like, are you going to alienate everyone around you to chase? Are you going to give up your ethics, your principles to chase material stuff? Right. Yeah. Right.
And end of the day, I know my sense is also like people have to figure out for themselves what was the point in the first place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if your goal is to be happy and self-fulfilled, but by doing this actually moves you further and further from that quote-unquote happiness, that it's not worth that.
Yeah. So actually my goal when I accepted this job was FIRE, actually, financial independence, retire early, right? And I actually had like a whole spreadsheet of like goals to hit every month of whether or not I could achieve FIRE by like a certain age, right? But I realized that it was not sustainable for me to keep going where I'm going, to hit FIRE, right? So my goals, okay, I just need like, 5,000 ringgit a month to survive, all that kind of stuff, and so I need this like X millions to retire from passive income. But then like if I was going to burn myself, and destroy my mental health along the way, then why do it, right? I realized there was like more than one way to live, more than one way to like achieve like freedom. Because FIRE to me was like freedom, right?
Right. It was the first time I heard this acronym, by the way.
Really? It's actually really, really famous. You can go to like Reddit and type FIRE, and there's a whole like movement on like FIRE, right? Like there are even like FIRE calculators. You type like, oh, I spend this much, this is how much I think I'll need to survive. And then you divide it by like 0.04%, which is like FD rate lah, right? And then you say this is the amount, this is the money you need. And because you draw 4%, divide by 12, that is like your
financial independence, retire early.
Yes. So most people aim to achieve FIRE by 40 years old, right? And to them, they will do anything it takes to get to FIRE.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sidetracking a bit, but do you meet a lot of people who get to FIRE and are actually retired early? I'm asking more because I'm reflecting on my personal life. I think
actually, no. Actually, no. If you're not already rich, right?
But unless you
have inherited wealth,
yes,
they're just working for fun, right?
Yes.
Working for personal fulfillment, right? But actually, no. Maybe because I'm not 40 yet. Right? But I have heard of the FIRE movement quite a lot. Yeah.
Oh, right. I mean, I'm asking this question more because my best guess is if you are actually running at that kind of pace, once you get to 40 or whatever, it's very hard to get off that treadmill. It
is very hard to get off that treadmill, right? Yeah. And I think, and then after that, you may feel very like empty and like very like, oh, I've achieved FIRE. Now what, right? Like right now, even if, let's say, I've somehow achieved FIRE, I haven't, right? Would I completely stop working? Probably not. I probably still do some, side projects, some side business, side income because it's fulfilling, right? But yeah, actually, there was a interesting story I read. Have you ever heard of a book called The Alchemist, Paul Cole?
Oh, yeah, I love that book.
Yeah. There's a story about this man that wanted to fish, right?
Yeah.
Like a fisherman by the river, and the rich businessman comes in and be like, hey, you fish like non-stop for a full week, you get more fish. Then the fisherman says, and then what? And then you can buy a bigger boat. Then the fisherman says, then what? Then you can invest in like a cannery and, expand your business. And they say, then what? Then you build millions and millions and you'll be so rich you wouldn't know what to do. Then the fisherman says, then what? Then you can fish anytime you want. Then the fisherman says, isn't that what I'm doing already? Then he just, really nailed the point. It's like, what am I doing all this for, right? Right? Like, so I can be free, but I can try to achieve that level of like freedom now, right? So that was like one of the stories I read when I was in like my rut, and made me like realize that, this chase, right, is actually kind of pointless lah.
Yeah, and in some sense that sometimes like people should ask the first question, what do they want? And then design your life around.
Correct. What do you want, and how do you achieve that and live by that rather than compromise all of that right now for something later, right? So I think this was one of the like realizations I come to in therapy. What are my values? Or when I close my eyes, how do I envision my life? A lot of miracle questions they ask in therapy. Yeah.
Right. And before you start chasing that prize or goal, you should ask yourself, do you even want the prize?
Yeah, do you want it? Or is this something someone told you want it?
Yeah,
right.
Or like the cost, right? The cost you need to pay to get that prize. Have you thought it through?
Yeah. And when I was like starting up Aloe, I also tried to build Aloe according to like my values as well, as to what I would like a company to run, right? I didn't want my people to be constantly stressed. I didn't want them to feel anxiety all the time, so I wanted them to have freedom to choose their time. So all the therapists at Aloe take time off. They don't need to ask. They just block the calendar and they go. They take 1 month off. One even went to Korea. They did her therapy sessions from Korea. So I said, go, just do what makes you happy, right? And if you really take time off, go ahead, take the time off, right? And I just did a check-in all of them, and I always ask them, how are you doing? Are you taking time off? Self-care, right? And these were like questions I was never asked when I was like working in like Big Four and like corporate. Yeah. Maybe it was a different time then, and maybe it's changed now, and I do hope that people do check in on like their peers or their colleagues' mental health. Yeah.
All right. I can ask a sort of business related question. I mean, I love the concept. And at the same time, like if it becomes how do I ask this question? So every business is trying to essentially become profitable and all that, right? Because you need it to sustain. I know you put it this way, right? So if you instill a culture where people can just disappear from work or just take time off whenever they want, like, would you make it very difficult to build a sustainable business?
So because I knew that's what I wanted, I don't hire, none of them are full time. So it's on a freelance basis. Right. And I built it this way because if I did have a full-time staff, I'll be incentivized to micromanage them, to squeeze as much value out of them, right? And to try to calculate like ringgit per head count, like profit per head count. And I didn't want to attach a number to a person, right? So I went on like a sharing basis, right? You win, I win. You don't, if not lose. Like if you take time off, that's fine. Both of us have skin in game, right? So I built this business so that I could live by this principle that you can have your freedom, I can have my freedom. I hate micromanaging. I trust that you can manage yourself. If you can't manage yourself, then you just don't. Then this is not the place for you, right? So all the therapists are on like freelance basis.
Right. Yeah, right. No, that makes sense actually. Yeah, I love that. Basically, you obviously you already have a clear idea how you want to run the company. So you just design all.
I design the company according to how I would want to work.
Yes.
Like if I had like 20 full-time staff, right? I probably come into office every day. Probably look at them. I think working, because they're being paid regardless, right? And then I'll try to squeeze, work long hours, reduce head count, and then it will lead to potentially very unhappy working conditions. And actually, this happened at a lot of therapy centers,
right? Where
they hire full-time staff and they get work to the bone, right? And then and what I learned is that when a therapist is burnout, my clients don't get the best care, right? The clients can feel it as well. Like, my therapist is tired, not present with me, not listening, and then they feel very unheard. Yeah. So happy therapist, happy client. Yeah.
No, I love that. And one of the other goals with Aloe is obviously make it more accessible to a lot of people. How do you do that?
Okay, so when I first started therapy, it was through a recommendation, right? Because at the time the firm was sponsoring my therapy sessions, so I just like, they'll find someone for me, and then they did, and I went for therapy. And when this idea came to me, I obviously had to do my research, right? I went Google, I went online, I went to see who was in the market, and I realized that there wasn't a lot of transparency, right? A lot of the fees were like, you have to like fill up a Google form, and then they reply to you with the fee. So it wasn't like really available, right? You have to inquire and ask how much are the fees, and then they will, tell you, right? And I felt that if you really were struggling with your mental health and you were reaching out for help, having this additional step is a barrier, right? When you're very depressed, waking up is a chore. Waking up is like a battle, the battle to struggle a bit. And to add this additional layer, it seems very like unnecessary, So I was like, it should be transparent. Prices out there, And another thing was that you can't choose your therapist. A lot of places where you fill out the Google form, they'll assign you a therapist, so you don't choose. And you don't even, and some of them, they have their profiles up, but otherwise you don't get to choose. Even you can request. So I felt, no, just choose, just go ahead and choose your therapist. And I felt that gave a lot of agency to the client, right? The client can read through the profiles and be like, I think this person resonates with me. They also study in UK, they have experience of living overseas. I think they'll be able to relate to my experiences. And then they go ahead with that therapist. and then, you can I just tried to make the journey a lot easier and smoother than what I saw in the market, right? Where you have to write in, they assign you a therapist, and you go back and forth a little bit about the timing, and then you pay through a bank transfer. It felt very like cumbersome, especially in like the 21st century, right? So I just built a very easy booking platform, like self-managed, right? And of course we still have an admin, that works to respond to any questions about therapy. So that's how I felt. I think that's what made Aloe very accessible, because you didn't need to ask questions, wait one day, get a response, and then get assigned a therapist you didn't even choose. So yeah.
Right. And the name Aloe, by the way, does it come from any?
It came from the plant Aloe, but I actually didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the name. I just googled healing plants and then aloe vera. That's like, okay, Aloe. But in hindsight, I think it was a pretty good choice. Obviously, the other names I thought about was like Mindwell, or Mind Psych Mind. But then I think the pros of coming up with like a different name is that you don't have to pay much for SEO. It's easy to get to the top of the page for SEO. You don't have to pay a lot for the keyword, right? And another like benefit someone pointed out was that you get listed in any of the listicles. A is the first one, so you're on the top. So I was like, oh yeah, not bad, right? So and I didn't want to spend a lot of time in the ideation phase thinking of the perfect name, right? I think done is better than perfect. And I always thought to myself, if I really needed to, I could rebrand, right? Like how, my taxi was rebranded to Grab, right? I could always rebrand. But the point was to get it started rather than to think of the perfect name, right? The logo was like a free logo from GoDaddy also. Yeah, I didn't really... I started the website in like one afternoon. Yeah, I built the website one afternoon.
Right. I think speaking of like starting businesses, I think sometimes a lot of people overthink a lot of these little things. They think it's very important, but it's not to say it's not important, but it's not the most important thing now.
Yes, just do first, think later, right? You actually don't need a lot of capital to start a business. Aloe was 100% remote and virtual for the first year. And because of that, like our overhead costs were like very low, right? Like my capital to start Aloe was like 5,000 ringgit, right? To start Aloe. And I didn't think about the name very long. I just like 1 hour. That's it. Like just get it done, right? I actually had a co-founder back then, of a partner back then, and we felt that our working styles were very incompatible because she was a colleague as well, and she needed a lot of information, right? A lot of like it's a question I hate the most. How big is the market? What's the market size? But how do we know that there's a demand for it? How many depressed adults are there in Malaysia? Then she has to pull up the DOSN, Department of Statistics Malaysia numbers. And I was like, I think that's enough. And the best way to test the market is to sell it.
Yes, is to launch something.
Is to launch something and see if people pay for it, right? Because yes, there could be demand, but maybe they don't want to pay for it, right? Then it's a completely different question. And I think at the time I was considered unemployed. I was bleeding money, from being alive, living expenses, right? She had a job, so our working pace was like completely different, right? Like every day I'll be like, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that, we gotta launch, this is like the stuff we gotta do. And she's like, yeah, I'll get to it, I'll check tomorrow. And then and it came to a point where like we had a very tough conversation of our partnership, right? And I think she said, I don't think this will work out. I think if we were to continue, we'd lose our friendship, right? And I value our friendship, more than this project. To her, it was a project, right? But to me, it was like, I gotta get this done because I'm unemployed, right? So then we parted ways, and it was actually I felt very, very like lost, very like I felt a bit devastated, right? Because I felt I couldn't do this alone. How can I do this alone? Starting a business is so tough, right? Are you your sole founder as well?
Yeah. Actually, our stories are fairly similar.
Right, fairly.
Yeah.
So then I was like, oh, how can I do this? I'm not good at so many things. I need someone, and I was like very, very sad. And I had no choice. I had to do it. And in hindsight, I think it was a wise choice, right? Like she made a good call. And even though I felt very, very devastated at the time, I think it was also a good call. Right? I think starting a business with co-founders is a bit like marriage, right? It's better to be single than to be locked into like a relationship that's just doesn't work for you, like a bad marriage, right?
Yeah, yes, right.
I think there are some statistics about how most business fail, not because of poor product or poor of sales. Most of them fail because of bad partnerships.
Yes.
Of like fighting, of squabbling. I've heard a lot of my friends who started business where they have difficulties with a partner not pulling their weight, right? So, I think, if you had to start a business, it's better to start it alone than to find a co-founder or partner that is not a good fit. Yeah. Doesn't have the same vision or the same kind of urgency as you.
Yes, and you're right. I also read this somewhere that a lot of businesses fail because at the co-founder level, there's a misalignment. Yeah. Sometimes it's like some co-founders are not pulling the weight. Sometimes they have different visions.
Yeah.
Sometimes both want to be CEO.
A power struggle.
Right? Yeah, there's a power struggle. So there's always like many things. So I think ideally, if you start a business, if you have a great co-founder, that's ideal.
Yes.
But if you can't find a great co-founder, it's better to start it alone.
Yes.
And the third one is only it. I mean, then the worst one is to have a bad kind of founding team.
Yeah, I think it's better to start a business alone because we were lucky. I was lucky in the sense that we parted ways before I started the company. So we didn't have to worry about transferring, shares, removing directorship, right? So then the next day I just called my dad. Like, you want to own 1% of the company? My dad's like, okay. Because I needed another LLP, I needed another partner. So my dad's like my other partner. Tipping. Big cut.
Like a snapping director.
Snapping doesn't do anything. Just sign papers for me. Yeah.
Right. And can I ask, one, you obviously went through a corporate job and you, there's stuff about the job that you didn't want. You wanted your freedom, etc. You valued that a lot, right? But now that you're been running Aloe for a few years, do you have that freedom? Because sometimes I always find that if you start a company, doesn't the opposite happen? Like you actually have less freedom.
I think you definitely had to give up freedom in the first 2-3 years. I think I'm lucky in the sense that I only needed to give up 2-3 years of my freedom, right? And I think the freedom comes in different levels. Obviously, firstly, is the physical freedom. I can't, and at the time, it was also COVID, so it's not like I could go anywhere, right? I was like, okay, I'm stuck at home, right? Start a business, so I couldn't travel because of COVID and also because of lack of funds, right? And even if I did travel, I'll honestly be too anxious or too stressed to enjoy myself. So I think I didn't travel for like a few years. And then the other one is mental freedom. Like I did say that I was in therapy still for 2 years throughout. It's because I was also very nervous and very anxious about the business, right? I had the mortgage coming up. I still had rent to pay. I wasn't living with my parents. I still had to pay for my meals, pay all the bills, right? So I needed this to work, right? I needed this to work. So there was a lot of anxiety over that. So I would say that, you definitely do give up that mental freedom. And even, but now I would say that, I've built, I've got people I can count on to run the business even when I'm not there. I think someone once told me that if you have a business where you're gone for 1 week and the business crumbles, something is not right, right? Like your business still needs to be able to run even when you're not there. So you have to build systems to support the business in the event if, you are hospitalized, right? The business can't stop, right? It has to keep going. So to build like a sustainable business requires that. So I've thought about it. I do have full-time staff to run the admin work. I have a booking system that works pretty well. Pretty well. I hope my clients don't say that, but actually, pretty well. Of course, a few hiccups here that nothing that my admin can't fix, nothing that I can't solve over email. So actually, I would say that I've a bit more freedom. Actually, not a bit, but a lot more freedom than I had when I was working in corporate, right?
That's the dream life most people have, right?
Yeah, I still go in, I still, or I think one of the perks of doing accounting, I could close my own accounts every month. I could do my own P&L, look at the numbers, and then close my own accounts every month. I look at the numbers, check if like the drivers, the key numbers are like meeting like expectations. If it doesn't, then look into it a little bit. But most part, it runs
Right.
quite smoothly even when I'm not around.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of your therapy is delivered online, is it?
Yeah, most of the online.
Right.
Yeah.
Even today, most of it's delivered online.
Yes, most of it's online because our online sessions are a lot cheaper, right? And that's one way we try to keep it affordable. And we actually have a lot of clients overseas as well. A lot of Malaysians who are based in like a UK, Australia, Japan, and even US. They come to us for sessions. Yeah.
Right. Do you face any challenges with this form of delivery, or do people
Online?
Yes, or do they want like face to face? Does it matter so much?
It does. It does matter, especially if the other person or the client is a high risk, right? And it's very hard for us to ensure the safety of the person if they're not in Malaysia. So I would say one of the main difficulties of online sessions is safety, right? And normally for high-risk clients, we always urge them to seek in-person help, but sometimes circumstances just make it hard for them to do it, and we try our best. Yeah.
I see. Right. And suppose you have to balance the accessibility.
Right. Another one is minors. Minors we always prefer to have them in person as well because of body language. Sometimes they don't want to talk to us. The parents put them there, right? And then they're like, don't want to talk. And then it's much harder to build like a rapport, build like a bond between the therapist and the client when it's remote. I think we're at one where the teen client just turned off the camera and said, I don't talk. It's like, what can we do? Right? I had to call the father, like, please speak your daughter, turn on the camera. Right? But if you're in person, they can both just sit in silence until one wants to talk. Yeah.
Right. How do you, let's say, do you call them therapists or consultants, the people? Therapists, right?
Yeah.
Right. How do they, because they're obviously speaking with people who need help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Don't they somehow carry that emotional burden and repeatedly, like every day,
They go for therapy.
Or they also need to
Of course. Yeah. So it's very important for them to actually a big part of like the Masters in Clean Psych or the Masters in Counseling course is how then do they, because I don't, this only from my conversation with them, how do they not carry this with them to the next session? So for example, you could have a very difficult client, with like childhood trauma, abuse, all of that. And the next client, doesn't have that. How then do you, take that and put that down and be fully present for the next client, right? And that's why we always have a 30-minute slots between every session. So the therapist can write their notes, put everything onto paper, and then close it, and then move on to the next client. But a lot of them go for therapy to not a lot of them, I would say some of them go for therapy. Some of them seek your supervisors, especially for very difficult cases where they feel stuck. They're like, how do I move forward? Which approach, should I take? What does this client need? Or they seek peer support. So they reach out to their peers and like share and like, get emotional support from their peers. Yeah, of course. They actually can't really talk to me because I'm not a professional. Sometimes they come to me for some support, but I can't give professional advice because I'm not a clean psych or a counselor. Yeah.
Right. And can you tell me more about that 30-minute break thing? So you mentioned like in between sessions, they write stuff down.
They write case notes. Yeah.
They write case notes.
Yeah.
And then so is there anything else that they do?
Okay, the case notes is pretty important. So they write down, what the client came in with, they're always doing some form of risk assessment at the back of their head. Like, is the client low risk, medium risk, high risk? They write, I think the most important part is then I can't really speak with this authority because I'm not. It's only again from what I've heard from them is that they need to plan the next session. So, for example, if the client is going through a very tough time, like very, emotional time, the approach isn't to give clients solutions, tell the client what to do, or explore solutions. It's give the client space, validate their emotions, and give them the time to work this through out themselves, right? So that could be an approach. Then maybe they say explore relationship with parents in next session, so that they plan for the next session on what to talk about based on the current session. So they think that, okay, this person, maybe like I came in with, when I started therapy, I came in with work issues. I thought, oh, work's so stressful, right? But actually, once I let it all out of system about how work is terrible, all the stuff, that then the therapist probably wants to explore my relationship with my parents to sort of like peel the layers, understand where all these thoughts come from. So the case notes also represent like the journey of the client and where the therapist wants to talk about next. And then it depends on your approach. So there are a lot of like therapeutic approaches. There are like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's also ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. There's psychodynamics, something which my therapist did, which is exploring the subconscious. It's also what you see a lot on TV where the therapists are, you lie back, close your eyes, and like, what do you see? There's psychodynamic, and then a lot of person-centered, systemic explores systems around you that create who you are. So yeah, actually it's like a very like, it seems very like mystical feel.
Right. But how does like this writing case notes in 30 minutes help them sort of close one chapter, transition to another one?
So it's sort of external. You because they have to write the case notes no matter what.
Right.
So whether you write it at the end of the day or after every session, you have to write it. If you don't put it on paper, you'll still be thinking about it in the next session of what to write, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, I need to write that, like what if I forget? I can't forget this. And then maybe you're carrying it to the next session and you may not be fully present in the next client. Yeah. So it's better to like get it out and then like put everything in the case notes, and then you can relax, right? Okay, I don't have to remember this anymore, or keep it in the back of my mind for the next session. Yeah.
Right, makes sense. So they sort of like, as in they can sort of, it helps them sort of let go.
If you ever like work, and you're less like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do all these things, and there's just so many things in your mind to keep track of, right? For them, it's like that, but then, and sometimes I get it, and what I do is I just write it down, and then I leave it there, and I'll come back to it later. Yeah. So I have like a WhatsApp group with myself.
What's it will be yourself?
With myself, so I just send myself like messages, right? I'll be like, oh, explore this, do this, like any thought, I'll just put it there, right? And I can always scroll back and be like, oh, this is like my stream of consciousness, right? And I sort of offload it, right? It's a very fancy term for this called externalizing cognition. But honestly, it's just like journal take, just putting your thoughts on paper so you don't carry it with you.
Oh,
yeah, like a to-do list, lah. But yeah,
right.
But more free form.
All right. I tend to write a lot, especially if something's bothering me. It helps me, also see things a little bit clearer.
Yeah, it's like journaling, right?
Yeah. And by putting it on paper, when I see things a little bit clearer, I feel a sense of like the worry lessens a lot.
Yeah.
Because like, I just, okay, I had an idea what I could do.
I journaled a lot when I was in the first two years of it. A lot of thoughts were like, oh, what if this doesn't work out? Oh, I'll be homeless. Right, and then when you read back, you're like, huh, like what was I thinking? Right, you put it on paper, but you put out all like my thoughts or like my irrational thoughts on paper, then you realize that it's pretty irrational, and then you can write down saying, "Oh, this is not true. I'll still have a home. I'm sure I can find another job. I'll just reach out to Hiredly to find a job for me, right? But yeah, I can still find a job. My skills are transferable, so then you can write like counter thoughts to fight. So this is like a CBT technique, that I learned through therapy.
Right. I have a question. this question sounds a bit broad, but I don't know how else to ask it, right? So, like, in Malaysia right now, like, how would you sort of describe the state of, like, mental health, let's say, with, like, young adults or working adults?
I would say that there's definitely a growing awareness among, like, the working adults in Malaysia. It's not such a stigmatized term anymore to say that, hey, you know, I have mental health issues. I think among, like, the older folks, like 40s, 50s, they know of the term, but I think it's a bit hard for them to grasp what it is, you know. But yeah, I think the awareness is definitely growing.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think there's still what other silent struggles you still kind of notice? But you think that because you're at the space, you see it, but generally you think it's still quite unseen in Malay?
I think there's a lot of misconception that you only go to therapy when you're, like, drowning. You know, when you are already, like, in over yourself and you are at the bottom, right? But you actually don't have to wait till you hit rock bottom to go for therapy, right? You can just go for therapy, like, when you need someone to talk to, or you need an objective third party or a sounding board, right? And I think there is, and I think there's a lot of thoughts, and I know this because I had this thought saying my problems are not serious enough to go for therapy, right? Or other people have it worse, you know, or why do I need therapy? But you don't have to compare your struggle with another person. It's enough that if you are struggling, just go for therapy. Yeah.
Right. So the people don't have to feel like it's somewhat serious before they consider.
Yeah. They don't need to say, oh, I don't have a disorder, so I don't need therapy. But, you know, you can go for therapy for anything. You go for therapy for burnout, obviously work stress, anxiety, relationship. You can say, you know, I think that before we get married, for example, let's go for a bit of couple counseling to sort of iron out the cracks so that we can, you know, be a stronger couple together after. So, yeah.
Right, like couple counseling is a form of therapy. Is it a form of therapy?
It is a couple counseling is a form of therapy. Yeah.
Right.
And then I think we even had a group of friends coming together saying, hey, we're fighting, you know, can we have a counselor sort of mediate this? Yeah, it was, like, quite interesting. So we had that as well. You know, kudos to them actually for being so, like, proactive with it. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So have you done some of these things in Aloe, as in help mediate conflicts and stuff?
I can't do it because I'm not a counselor or clinical psychologist, right? Well, obviously they come to me, hey, Ling-Lei, can we do this? You know, and I'll say, yeah, sure. If you're comfortable doing it, then why not, right? Obviously we need to get consent from all parties. You know, we can't force someone in to sit in a room and say, talk, right? They won't talk, right? So yeah, we just got the consent, tell them upfront the expectations. The therapist is not there to tell them what to do, tell them the solutions. I think another misconception is that the therapist should tell them what to do, right? And it's actually not the case. The therapist just empowers you to make your own decisions, to take agency of your life and decide what you want to do, and it just help you ask the right questions to arrive at the answer that you want to take. Yeah,
like a sounding board, like that.
Yeah, you know, like, I think maybe deep down the therapist knows what's right for you, right? Maybe, you know, but it's important that you come to this conclusion yourself. And if someone tells you what to do, some people, I don't want to tell me what to do, I don't want to do it, right? Or they feel that, oh, they tell me what to do, I do it, and if it goes wrong, it's your fault, right? So they need to arrive at this answer themselves. So yeah.
Right. So interesting. I mean, like, I'm thinking.
Have you been?
Yeah, some form of counseling and all that I have. It's helped me see things a little bit clearer. As an example, one thing that I find, there's a moment in time where I was speaking something like super challenging, and then when I was speaking to the counselor, I realized that it was a lot more common than I thought. You know, and then he kind of like, he sort of lighten the entire thing so much. Like, I'm not, like, it's not unique to me, you know, like everyone, there are a lot of people dealing with this.
Yes.
It just made it easier to process, and there's I just have to figure out how I'm going to do with this situation.
I had the opposite realization. I went to therapy thinking like, oh, but it's normal to hate your job. It's normal to wake up wanting a car to crash into you. It's normal to go to bed and hope to never wake up. ha ha ha, I laughed about it. And Terry looked at me and just like, no, it's not. I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's not normal to think about this. And it's just, and I was like, you mean to tell me there are people that don't wake up on Mondays hating their lives? They're just like, yes. They're just like, oh, this is news to me, because I worked in audit, like it's normal to have the Sunday blues and to absolutely hate Mondays, right? So I didn't know anything outside of this. I didn't know that liking your job was an option, right? For me, maybe back then, because of my parents working in audit as well, a job is not something you are supposed to enjoy. It's just a way to make money, a means to an end. So then it was quite shocking to me to hear that, oh my God, it's possible to not hate your job and it's possible to live a happier life. She's like, yeah, yes, Leng-Lei, it's possible to be happier than you are right now. Then I was like, oh, wow, like how do I get there? She's like, this is what we'll help you with in therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Can I ask what, so if I'm going to sort of play devil's advocate here, right? So if you, one thing sometimes I hear about, let's say, okay, there's one not camp, but some people believe obviously mental health as a topic should be more prevalent. People should be aware of it a little bit more. And then there's also a different, I guess, some people look at it a bit differently, saying that, it's maybe overused sometimes when people are facing stress as an excuse to not face the stress. Like, as in like, it's not, it's like stress, it's very normal.
Yeah.
You shouldn't make everything into like a mental health issue. Like, how do you sort of like find that line, or how do you approach? Yeah, I'm not sure if you understand what I'm getting at.
Actually, like stress is not a bad thing. There's actually good stress and bad stress, right? There's eustress, good stress, and distress, bad stress. And I guess to answer your question, let me think for a little bit. How then do some people weaponize mental health, right?
Yes. Where's the line between that? Are you sure this is a mental health issue, or do you just don't want to face this issue? Like, again, I don't know, because I'm
okay. I get it. But to think about it this way is that for people to weaponize mental health, it also means they have certain issues, right? And that perhaps it's not stress, perhaps it's avoidance, fear, self-esteem, right? And that they are using mental health, a cover of mental health to sort of like block it, right? They always hear things like, they don't have depression, they're making it up, right? You always hear this, right? They're doing it for attention. Perhaps it's true. It is a cry. They are asking for attention. It is a cry for help, right? It is. If they're making it such a big deal, there is something that is not that they are seeking for, and that they would benefit from therapy, right? So if this person comes in and complains nonstop, stress out, I don't want to work, I just want to stay at home, do all these things and not work, then they do need some help.
I get it.
And they need to go for therapy. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Right. Yeah, makes sense, right? So I mean, whether they use it as a cover or like this year, but basically they would benefit a lot from talking to someone. There's a reason why they are shouting about this.
Correct. As a reason why they are weaponizing something, or maybe or for lack of better words, making it up, right? Because healthy and mentally healthy people don't want to make things up, right? To run away from something or to avoid something, they would confront it obviously with some discomfort, but still do it. So yes, it is a cry for help, and that and I know it's hard for managers, to deal with this, but it's to give them space and to allow them to explore this in therapy. Yeah.
And when you let me jump back to this. When you switch from your corporate life into obviously starting a business now, were there habits that you needed to unlearn, to start Tho?
Oh yes.
What were they?
So I think in corporate, in especially consulting, it's a lot of optimizing. No, how to optimize, right? How to get number to go up, right? And I had a lot of like numbers to track, right? But then I realized that, I'm running a human business. I'm dealing with people, and that number doesn't always have to go up, right? And a lot of my conversations with my therapist back then was like, oh, your number of sessions drop, why are you not getting, then I realized that this was not conversations, this wasn't their focus. Their focus was always client care, right? And I had to shift the mindset from like optimizing numbers to like, thinking about the goal, the values the company should have, right? Which is people thinking about what's best for the client, what's best for the therapist, what's best for the client, right? And and a lot of the check-ins right back then was involved numbers. Now less numbers and more of how are you doing in your life? Are you doing self-care? What's new? How can Aloe support your journey? Sister, you're transitioning to motherhood. How can Aloe support you with that? You need a bit more time. Do you need a nursing room? They are transitioning between, a lot of them have other jobs while working at Aloe, and they're in transition period. I'm like, okay, do you need to get a bit more time off, to focus on this transition? Don't get stressed. Also, a lot of conversation involves me taking care of the well-being rather than the well-being of like the company. Yeah. Because I think after a while, it's one and the same. Yeah. They are the.
Right. I was going to ask you how you handle your role differently as someone who runs like a mental health company, but I suppose this is one.
Right. I think the irony is that a lot of mental health companies don't have therapists that have like great mental health because they're like very worked to the bone. And I was like, no, I think the mental health of my team is important, right? Because if they don't have capacity for themselves, how can they have capacity for the clients, right? And they sometimes may bring in their own personal issues to the clients. So, and I didn't want that. So I think I have to really focus on like the people and my team. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And on the topic of building a business and entrepreneurship, like what do you think is the biggest misconception in Malaysia about building a business here?
Actually, I think thinking that you need to have a partner or you need a lot of money to start a business, you don't. Aloe started with actually less than 5K. 5K is just what I put in like the account, right? Like a GoDaddy domain is like 100 ringgit. Google like Google Business Suite is like 50 ringgit, and you just need to start and to fail fast and to reiterate and repeat the process over and over again until you find one that fits, a product market fit, right? I think although it's better to start a business alone than to have a partner that doesn't work, support is still very important, right? Like I have a supportive partner that helped me through a lot of my anxiety. I still went for therapy to work through that. I had a mentor as well to sort of, give me ideas, or guide me through the way. So I still had support. It just came in a different form. And I think that's also very important, right? That asking for help is one way to build resilience as like a founder. Yeah.
Right. And also, as you mentioned, actually it doesn't take a lot of money, right?
Yeah, just do, like the best way to test your product is to try to sell it. Right? And if no one buys it, your product doesn't work, right? Then go back to the drawing board, reiterate and try again, right? And is to, rather than to search out for some statistics, size the market, do some modeling, is to make something, test it. That is a concept called minimum viable product, right? Test whether the product is viable, and then if it works, people actually want to buy it, then how do you scale it, right? Like I didn't have systems back then. I had online sessions, right? I was sending out the confirmation emails manually. There's a term that my mentor used, orangmatic. You think it looks automatic in front, at the back it's just someone being like a person doing it. I was generating the meeting links, sending it, and it looked automated from the front, right? It was just me typing the emails back then, right? Because I didn't want to spend time looking for the perfect like booking system. I wanted to get it started, right? And of course, back then I only had like few sessions a day, so I was like sending out reminder emails as if they were like an automated system, right? And I write, do not reply, this is an automated email. Actually, it's just me sending out the emails, right? Sending out the emails. Yeah. Just do it. And once, obviously at some point it's unsustainable for like a founder to be sending out automated emails, right? Then I look into the systems to actually properly automate it. By then I had a better idea of what I needed for the business because I was doing it manually, right? So I was like, I need a business that reminds them this to that, calendar invites, all the stuff.
Right. It reminds me about early days. So when you spend 5,000. If you walk out the Hialeah office, there's one room at the front. It's called 6,000.
Oh.
And that's literally the amount of money we paid for our first website.
Oh yeah. See, you actually don't need hundreds of thousands. You don't need to raise funds. You don't need to go for Series A funding.
Yes.
And I think the benefit of running so lean was that without paying myself a salary, we would have broke even in 4 or 5 months at that. Yeah.
Right.
Because it was very, very lean. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. In the beginning, you don't have to overthink. Don't think about spending money first. Think about how to make money.
Yeah. Think about, about refining the product, your service of the product, right? And I think another misconception is that most people feel like the business has to be novel, has to be something new, never done before, has to be, you have to be the first to market, right? And you actually don't. There are plenty of businesses out there. Look at all these restaurants opening all the time. Restaurants are millennial old concepts, right? And they still are successful, or rental copy, right? Your idea or your business doesn't have to be super, super novel, right? It just has to be good. Of course, it helps to have first mover advantage, right? But it's not everything, So I think I spent a lot of people saying that, have you done this? Oh, but it's been done before. Are they successful? Yes. So why not do it as well? Right. So yeah, I think when I meet people and they want to start their own business, they're always very, very concerned of being first in Malaysia, or doing something that someone has done before. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I've got 2 last questions.
Okay.
So first one is, throughout these years, from your first job until what you're doing now, has the word success, does it mean differently to you? How has it evolved?
Back then, success means fire, right? Financial defense, retire early. I think for me now, success means having time, freedom to choose how I spend my time. And now I can spend time with my family, spend time on my hobbies, spend time on things I find meaningful, right? And also spend time doing meaningful work within the company, right? Not work for the sake of working, but say that, okay, this is a project worthwhile spending time on, I will work on it. So for me, having this freedom is success. Yeah. Back then it was freedom, but 30 years or 40 years down the line, now it's freedom now. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And the last question, I feel like I want to sneak in a second one.
Go ahead, yeah.
On the, so 2 things lah. So, I'm thinking if I'm a sort of a young Malaysian right now, and I'm listening to this, and I feel like, I could really benefit if, should I talk to someone? Should I not talk to someone? They're thinking about it, but it feels like such a big move to do it. I can't imagine someone that hasn't gone to therapy before, have ordered to just pull out the website and decide who I should talk. And then there's so many questions in my head. Is it going to cost a lot of money? Where do I check? How do you suggest they should start? Okay,
actually, on one thing I started as well when creating Aloe was having mental health screenings. So usually people start therapy with a 1.5 hour session, and they pay 200 ringgit plus, for a session. And I think one of the biggest barriers for people to start therapy is the cost, obviously, and also uncertainty. Do I really need to go for therapy? Is my problem big enough for therapy? So then I say, let's have something called a mental health screening. So it's 45 minutes long online, and it's exploratory, right? We do a basic screening where we check for your depression, anxiety, and stress, and then after that, you can talk about what brought you to the sessions, and towards the end, the therapist, they say, what therapy can do for you, and then you make a decision whether you want to start therapy or not, right? So the mental health screening is 95 ringgit, right? And if that's also too expensive, we have trainees, and it's 25 ringgit, right? And the trainees are all supervised, and they're all master students. So it's still pretty decent. And at the end of the training session, you can still opt to continue with a trainee or actually say, I think I want a professional, like a fully graduated with work experience professional to start therapy with me. So having sessions start from 25 ringgit, I think really, really makes therapy a lot more accessible, and we always tell the clients, no commitment. You don't have to buy a package. Like, just one off, try it. If you feel it's for you, go ahead. If it's not, it's fine, right? And I think it makes therapy a lot less monumental, a lot less scary. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So if anyone's sort of like wondering, thinking about it, like they can start. I mean, there's a 25 ringgit way to start.
25
ringgit. Simple screen and then
simple screen,
right.
Chat with the therapist for 45 minutes, and then at the end, you feel like your benefit for you, go for it. You will feel like, I really feel better after this session, then I don't think I need it, then it's fine. Yeah.
Right. And they can find all this on the Aloe.
Yeah. Or you can also WhatsApp us. We have admin there that can answer these questions. Yeah.
Okay, great. And the other thing was, so my last question was like, for a lot of these young Malaysians, right, as they trying to build this career and they're, everyone, I'm not sure they know the acronym FIRE, but I guess it won't be surprising that obviously everyone wants to be successful, especially to start your career. Not many people start out saying they don't want to be successful.
Yeah.
So as they're chasing this career, I don't know whether you have like some general advice or not, but to help them, as they run out the treadmill.
General advice for people who are looking to start.
I mean, they're ambitious. I mean, maybe they are in a job. One is about starting, maybe two separate things, right? If you were to start a business in your 20s, like what would you try doing, right? Apart from Aloe. But if I'm actually working at the job and I'm very ambitious and I'm growing and I'm hearing all this, I'm hearing like happiness is very important, but you know what? I want the money. Like I want to have a very successful career here, and how do I achieve this without burnout? Let's say, and then let's say, therapy is one way, but I don't know whether there are other ways.
Achieve. I think one of it is again to make sure you build a business that supports the life you want, right? It supports. So, for example, if your goal is to work remotely in like Bali, like Koh Samui, but then you go and start like a physical cafe, you're going to feel burnout because it's not aligned with what you expected in life, right? So it is to ask yourself, when I build a business, how do I see myself running it, right? Is it, in front of a cafe or restaurant running it, which is fine if it is, or is it, a remote, a business that runs itself, where you can close one eye and not worry about supply chain issues, or stock or inventory, and make sure you start a business that is aligned with that. I think another thing is to make sure that if you start a business is to have belief in your product, a belief in your service, right? I started Aloe because I did therapy and I saw how helpful it was for me, and I believe it can help other people, right? And I think you were also in recruitment, right? Before you started Highly, so you know the value it brings and you believe in it. But if you start a business and you say, "Oh, this is a great product," and you try to sell it, but you've never used it, you don't know what, you don't know what how your users use it, I think it's going to be very difficult to sell it, right? So I think my advice would be that to build a business you believe in, and to make sure to build it in the vision of how you want to live your life, right? Otherwise you get burnout like all the time. Like when I started Aloe, I was doing all the admin work for 1 year, right? And I was so tired, right? And then I think my friends asked me, like, do you want to do this forever? Then I was like, no. Then hire someone. I'm just like, you don't want to do this forever, right? I say, you're so tired, you're actually burnt out. And I was like, yeah. Then go like, hire. Then I did. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Why didn't I do this sooner, right? And like hire someone to take a load off like menial everyday tasks so that because I wanted to be like to spend time for myself, then I had all this time for myself. I felt a lot less burnout, right? And another one is just hire to
Get some help.
get some help, ask for help. It's okay to do things yourself for the first few months, because then you're intimately familiar with the task. Then hire someone to fill that spot so you can focus on yourself and more strategic goals. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leng-Lei, for coming in and sharing your story.
Yeah.
Very candidly. And, I'm really happy that, company like Aloe is around. Hopefully we raise more awareness about all these mental health issues that people face, and to make it feel safe